Doc Podcast. Hope you are doing well. We are here and we have back from going all the way to Norway to see his sister graduate from med school, right?
Med school, yep.
There you go. What a great brother. Kylo is back, which is great. We got a bunch of stuff, a bunch of stats and everything. And we have the charming Kellyanne, the Swiss Army knife, going to be running charts, pulling data, and everything else while we talk.
Right on.
Kellyanne, how's the weekend?
It was really good. It was chill. Some of my friends and I, signed up on Threads, and then we couldn't get off it. They won't let us delete the app without deleting Instagram altogether. We just signed on to check it out, and then we spent the whole weekend trying to figure out how to get off.
I've heard about it. It's like a feature you've activated. Like Threads is like a feature on Instagram you activate, and then you're stuck.
Yeah, I was confused because I looked at it too. I clicked on it when I was in Norway, and they said that it wasn't available in the area. But I was confused that it was a different app, but then it was a part of it. So that whole thing has me kind of confused. It sounds like a bait and switch to me.
Well, bait and switch is certainly not legal. You can't do that. Yeah, it was sort of interesting. So I go on there, and all of a sudden I noticed, I activate. And it says you have 50 followers, then there's 100 followers, then there's 200 followers, then there's 300 followers, and then 500. And I'm like, what is happening here? And I'm texting with friends who are saying, hey, all that's happening is I'm getting a notice on you, you're getting a notice on me, and all your followers over on Instagram are rolling over, and that's all that's happening.
Yeah, it almost seems like if your followers on Instagram are going to sign on to Threads, then suddenly now they're following you on Threads as well. So it's definitely it's trying to compete with Twitter, but I don't know if it's gonna be able to do that.
Well, it's interesting. You were commenting about this earlier.
Yep. No, exactly. So I think it's interesting because the Threads is obviously Mark Zuckerberg's attempt to try to take on Elon Musk, because now he's a competitor with Twitter. And this definitely isn't the first time they steal features. I mean, first it was Snapchat with the stories that they took over. Then the big thing was verifications. As soon as Elon Musk mentioned that Twitter was going to do verifications, then Zuckerberg hopped on that. And I think the first week, I was looking at the numbers earlier, they did some 600 million in sales.
Oh, that's right. Zuck does almost $750 million doing the same thing that Elon did on, hey, if you pay and we validate, because Instagram was asking for driver's license, they had confirmation of ID, they had all this stuff going on. So it wasn't just let's take your money, they were really trying to make it so it was a validation.
Yes.
But then Zuckerberg gets a pass while everybody's pointing at Twitter going, ew.
Yes, and in Twitter, the odd thing is Twitter, you get more features. You can edit tweets, you could post longer videos, you could write longer tweets, there's no limits. And the reach-wise, there's a different aspect in terms of the algorithms where you can get a further reach once you're verified versus not being verified. So Twitter, you actually have features that make sense, and you can unlock more in the app. Instagram, as far as I understand, you just get the verification and it looks cool. But Instagram is more expensive than Twitter, and then Elon Musk and Twitter was the one who got all the hate when Facebook and Zuck were just skating away doing their thing.
And now Elon has thrown a shot across the bow and saying, hey, what does he say? Competition is good, cheating is not.
Yes, he said, I'm all for competition, but copying and pasting and stealing is not. So I read some tweets that he's considered lawsuits and legal action, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah. And what was also interesting is they were talking about that, it's all those people that Elon laid off are over at Threads working for Instagram. And then other people said, no, we were laying off people too. We didn't hire a bunch of those folks. So that turned out to be BS.
Yep. No, exactly. So,
interesting. Well, speaking of jobs, topic number one. Jobs report comes out at the end of last week. And let's go to the monthly job creation, because there's a lot of people that get upset about this. Because for 14 consecutive job creation announcements, forecasts that were given by our government, they get quietly revised in the following week, and then they announce later, oh, we beat our forecast. As if, well, hey, we're putting all these programs and everything in the economy trying to help moms and dads, and people get jobs and everything. Whoop, this just in, that just out. And get it all set up, and then boom, boom, boom. So let's go back to that chart and take a look at this. It's kind of interesting. So take a look at that. So You have early 2022. That was what we call the great return to work by restaurant workers. Remember that?
Yep.
Restaurants, movie theaters, theme parks.
Restrictions were closing down and things were opening up again.
Yeah, and then Biden said, look, I created all these jobs.
Yeah.
No, Biden didn't create those jobs. Those are people coming back to
Yeah.
work that had effectively been completely furloughed by the restaurant. And by the way, you know, servers, I don't want to say a gender term like waiter, waitress, so there'll be some sort of a protest outside in 10 minutes. But servers of however they identify, they're 1099s. So it's just like, well, you're not needed. Just, you know, you're not needed.
Cutting shifts left and right, and suddenly.
So you're not really creating jobs here. It kind of goes like this. Watch. It goes like this. So it goes like, I get divorced from my wife, but then I get remarried to my wife. And then I bring her to Thanksgiving. I say, hey, everybody, I'd like to meet my new wife. It's like, no, she's back. You know, it's like the same thing. The count is the same. And that's kind of what the jobs report is. So as we take a look at this, if you look beyond the blips, draw that trend line. See, the trend line's actually down. And now we've only created 209,000 jobs. And you know, what do you see? What are your friends out there? They're looking for jobs. And I think jobs. You've got nieces, nephews, and things looking for a little summer gig.
Absolutely, I think it's definitely tapering off as we're seeing on the chart there, and I think that as things stable out, it's kind of people are having to come back to work. People are having to adjust for more like a non-craziness. Especially the last couple of years have been insane, where people could job hop and get an extra 10, 20 grand per job, per hop, but now it's definitely seeming to stabilize and find a place where it's at an even keel, which is kind of as it should be, as opposed to it being all over the place jumping on that end.
There you go. And you know what's very interesting? We have another chart on where these jobs are. So I love this. So the 1 month net change in jobs. So healthcare and social assistance, 62,000 jobs. You know, I don't understand. They're saying there's a lot of retirement communities, retirement things, and then we have government, always a big employer. And then what have you got? You've got construction,
which is a good sign.
Leisure and hospitality. There's your theme parks, your hotels and stuff. That's up for the summer. Business services. But look at the bottom. That's why people are still talking about recession. Tell me what you see in the bottom there.
Retail trade. And transportation warehouse.
So you're not shipping, so nobody's buying stuff. There's no reason to shipping it.
And you're not wholesale trading. So I mean, these are definitely not good in terms of consumer spending and excess money to have to keep the economy going, as opposed to only spending on necessities.
Yeah, exactly right. So we can see it's like a tale of two cities. So if it's the government or it's healthcare, retirement communities, and all those services, that created a bunch of jobs. However. On the other end of it, it doesn't look like people are buying, and it doesn't like the wholesalers aren't shipping, and it doesn't look like they're being made. And logging was down, so AOC is probably happy because we're cutting down fewer trees, less jobs in logging.
The price of timber should be going down too, then hopefully.
Price of timber. So you know what? And that's actually interesting. That's going to be good because some of the home builders, excuse me, the home builders are out there saying, hey, you know, we're going to start building again because. The interest rates are high, and because home builders sometimes broker that first mortgage. They package that first mortgage inside of it, and then it gets sold to, you know, a bank or whatever. But they'll arbitrage the rate. What I mean by that is they'll say we'll give you a 6% 30-year mortgage. So they're actually in the price of the house. You don't know it. You've got some points in there you're paying, but it's the home builder that's doing that. So if lumber is down, that's going to help out the. It's not going to help out. You know, if lumber jobs are down, where's the lumber coming from to build these houses? So you know, who knows? Yeah, but I think it's very, very interesting to see what a tale of two cities. Now you can kind of see what's going on in the economy. But what I think is, you know, Jerome Powell, 25th, 26th, he's going to go out and talk about rates. And this job news can't be good for that.
I don't think it's going to help for sure. No, it's going to be interesting to see where it goes, because that's what, 2.5 weeks away, 2 weeks away.
Yeah, 25th, 26th, Jerome Powell will either raise rates or not, and I think it's looking like we're going to get 1/4 of a point, which means that the. Hey, Kellyanne, can you pull up 30-year 30-year mortgage today, if you just Google that, Google will give you the chart, and go ahead and put in there like a exactly 699 credit score, 30 years, pick Florida, pick Colorado, some average state, not California because they're just having all kinds of grief.
Yeah.
So we'll take a state that's going out there and take a look at this. This caught my eye over the weekend. I was watching this, and this kind of blew me away. In that the interest rates are actually 8. You know, you don't have to have bad credit to be offered an 8% rate now. You could be an average American with some solid scores coming into a bank trying to get a mortgage, and that's what you're going to be facing. And right now, with the government saying jobs are great, look how great it is, jobs are hot, and they're talking about that, and they're also talking about you know, inflation's coming down. Well, guess what? They're doing all that for votes, but you know what Jerome Powell does when he sees all that? He adds a quarter point.
He needs to balance it out for sure. I mean, it's just a matter of keeping it stable and then tapering it off slowly.
Because he wants to bring the economy down a bit. He wants to slow it down a little bit. He's trying to help inflation. That's what he's trying to help people. Poor people with them, you know, they're out there that have been just suffering with all this inflation and everything. He's trying to get the inflation under control. But you know, so it goes.
Yeah.
So do we have that? Do we have the Google?
I have a bank rate, 30-year.
No, just on Google, because Google will give you, if you just Google what are 30-year mortgage rates today, Google will give you the Google national survey they do, and you can select in there the territory and everything you want, and it's.
I've got this here with the interest rates and APR.
Oh, let's go take a look. Yeah, that's good enough. No, that's way low. That's way low. Nope. Yeah, it'll be like it's going to be the first return on Google. Anyway, never mind. The point is, Fed is probably going to raise a quarter point, which isn't going to help because, you know, where the jobs are and are not. But what was really interesting, Kai, you forwarded some stuff to me.
Yep.
Walk me through this, the great parent flippening.
Absolutely. This
that caught my eye, and I was like, wow. Speaking of jobs, where are the next generation of job holders living?
Yep, no, exactly. So this was a chart that I found over the weekend where we were looking at it. If you want to pull up the chart number 1 here, it was called the Great Parent Flippening, where it talks about what do 26-year-old Americans, who do they live with, right? We see 1968 versus 2018. So in 1968, 78% of people lived with their spouse. And then second one is 12% lived with their parents still, and then 4% lived with the roommate, and then 3% lived alone. So it's pretty clear in terms of where people are living and who they're living with. And then fast forward to 2018, which is 5 years ago. So these are now 31-year-olds, according to the statistics. A whopping 30% of them lived with their parents. And then the next one is 24% live with their spouse, and then you have a partner and roommate and some other stuff like that. So I think that aspect is definitely very interesting to see, because it just goes to show how things have changed to such a significant level where now more and more people are A, living at home, or B, a lot less are living with the spouse. So in terms of this, all we can see here is just obviously that you have this huge cohort of people who are now still living at home as opposed to moving on. Now, I think there's a couple different reasons for this. A big one would obviously be in terms of education, that now people are pursuing higher education, they're in school longer. My sister, she is now 27. She just graduated med school, so she's just getting started and stuff like that. So then you delay.
Doctor load
now. Yes. You delay buying a house or moving out with someone and stuff like that. So that's definitely a big one. And then obviously the other one, which is the elephant in the room and has been for some years now, is just pricing of homes. It's very hard now to be a first-time buyer, to get kind of priced into the market and be able to participate as opposed to just living at home. What do you think about this?
Well, what I think is, look, Bailey the golf girl is sending in the applications this fall. Mm-hmm. So she's got her GPA, she got her SAT done, really good SAT, 1560. I'm really just so proud of her. And so she's putting all this in, and she is actively talking to her friends that are starting their senior year of high school, and they're all going to be, in the month of August and September, sending in those applications. And she's hearing everybody saying the same thing. My parents can help me up to a point, so I'm hoping I can get financial aid at this level.
Yep.
I'm hoping maybe I can get a scholarship on a major I'm choosing, and then I'm hoping that my student loans won't be too big. So they're talking, these are juniors in high school talking about, the future of actually carrying student loan debt, when they're going to school. And so how can they, and then they're thinking about, I didn't ask her if she connected the dots all the way to housing and where you're gonna live, but because I think that's horrifying.
A big thing too now is that when you have, say you have two people who've gone to school, like me and my partner, for example, right? You each have anywhere from 150 to 200, maybe even 300 grand in student loans. That's you're both bringing basically the equivalent of a mortgage to the table to then on top of that try to afford a mortgage. So it just makes it very challenging to get that debt cleared out of the way, to then be able to go out and have a down payment and put that in a house and keep that going on that end.
Yeah, no doubt. So that's kind of a bleak future. And as a result, you had another chart which I thought was very interesting.
Yep.
This now connects to marriage. Now, we're not making a judgment call on who you marry. It's illegal to marry a bunch in the United States. But if you're going to start protesting or forcing things on kids, we're going to meet you right out front and we'll protest right back at you. But this was simply a chart you found. Tell me about this.
So this one was another chart here where it basically just says when couples would get married in terms of what age, and then how that has changed from 1947 to probably like 2018, 2019, or 2022 it goes to. So obviously looking back in the 40s, the age was a lot younger, anywhere from the average age being, for example, 22 and a half in 1959 versus, as you can see, women are probably like 2 years younger on average, I'd say. And that throughout the entire chart here is pretty steady, but what both men and women show over time, especially since like, let's say the mid 80s, it just starts inclining. So here you have for men, 30.1 years old, and then average for women was 28.2 years old. So obviously, this probably also goes back to pursuing higher education. You're kind of going through that path, and then later in life you get married, which in that case then, if the average is 30.1 for men and 28.2 for women, then it kind of makes sense in correlation in terms of where are you living. Because if you're not getting married till later on, then living with your parents in some instances could kind of make sense in terms of the correlation.
It's really kind of interesting because my dad was 24, my mom was 22 when they got married. They were young. Now we would look back and say they were really young. And then 2 years later, when my mom was 24, she had me.
Yep.
And so then I fast forward, not 2 generations, just me. Says, I met Kim when I was 39, and Kim threw me a 40th birthday party, and then we got married. And now we have 2 kids. And Kim's a little younger, not that younger. She's about 7 years younger than me. But that means she was 33.
Yep.
There you go. So 33 and 40. And we're just one generation later.
Yeah.
This isn't like from grandparents to parents.
Yeah, no,
so
for
it's
sure.
it's amazing, and I think the expense of life is feeding into this. It's because people jump into the job and start grinding away. But I think also there's a bigger thing. So for everybody watching, this is a trick. We wanted to talk about this, but then we wanted to go right back to the economy and talk about the labor market and taxes and things. So here we go. Here's the big U-turn back on topic. And what do we have? And this is very, very interesting because of what happened in Greece 11 years ago and what happened in Paris 11 hours ago with people getting annoyed. Paint the picture here.
So if you want to pull up the next chart here, in terms of total fertility rate in Italy from 1950 to 2020, as we can see here, that the chart just is falling at a very significant rate. And in 2020, Italy registered just 393,000 babies, meaning new people born in that year. And this is the lowest on record since 1861, which basically means it's the lowest in history of Italy. Because I'm pretty sure their records back then weren't as solid and stuff like that. But nonetheless, the problem with this is, which is going to be a longer term impact, which I think we're going to see now kind of play out in the next, I'd say 20 to 50 years, is that you're going to have an aging population where you have more people who are old, who are depending on the welfare of the economy versus people who are contributing to the economy. So you're going to have more people in retirement homes that need a pension, that need help from the government to survive and to sustain, versus people who are in the economy paying taxes that is going to be able to spend the money so that they can afford that and keep going. So this is obviously Italy is one of the examples here. I know China is having the same situation. Japan too right now is going through a big one there. And this in many ways is what Elon Musk specifically has mentioned as one of the biggest challenges we're having with the population in pretty much the whole world now, is that we're going down in terms of population growth.
Yeah, and you can paint this right back to, if you go back, look at, I think it's 12 years ago, in Greece, they announced this thing called austerity. And so what they said was, hey, you can't retire for another, I think it was 5 years. Why can't I retire for 5 years? I want to go sit on the corner and sip ouzo all day, you know? So, sorry, the government is El Broco, and we got a problem. And so you have to work 5 more years, and when you get there, you're only going to get, I think the first, they called it austerity, which is a fancy way of saying is we're paying you less than we promised. And I think the first austerity was 92%. So for every euro, $1 that a Greek person thought they were going to receive in monthly pension, they were only going to see from that state pension, not right, state. So that's their version of Social Security. Mm-hmm. Now they're only going to get 92 cents.
That's
and then it went down
8%.
Huh?
That's significant, 8% decrease.
Correct. And then it went down further from there. Then you saw everybody flip out. And it was very interesting to see. You had these 55-year-old people protesting alongside these 20-year-old people. And you were saying, why is everybody out there? Well, guess what? The 20-year-old people were saying, hey, I wanted to get, you found, by the way, this is how socialism works. Mm-hmm. It says, hey, I could get like 35,000 euros working at the post office. I want to go work at the post office. I can't get that job until my uncle retires, and he's earning 51,000 euros. So of all those years in career, it only went from 35 to 51, but people were settling for that. So I think that's settling for a rather meager existence, but you see what happened. You know, uncle can't retire for 5 more years, and when he does retire, he's going to get less. Mm-hmm. And the niece, the nephew, who are going to be perfectly happy working for the post office, now find out that that job won't be open for 5 years. Yeah. And it's not that they didn't want to go hang out at the beach. Who wouldn't? Mm-hmm. But they were like, hey, I got to earn something to live because I want to party, I want to do all these things. And so that was 12 years ago in Greece. And everybody in the West goes, boy, I'm glad that was over. They were turning over cars, burning things, all kinds of things. Guess what? The same thing is happening in European countries. The same thing. It's like France is like every time you turn the clocks, every time you adjust the clocks, they have countrywide riots for the last 2 years. It's kind of an interesting thing. And part of it has been on, guess what? What did Macron say?
Jobs.
You're gonna work longer.
Yep.
And when you retire, there may be adjustment.
Yeah.
Guess what? So ladies and gentlemen, when you hear the following phrase, when you hear your government in the United States saying means testing, you know what that means? They're testing whether your mom and dad or your grandparents or aunts and uncles will have the means to pay for part of that Medicare themselves. So what they were promised will not just be 92%, it could be 0. I'm sorry, your aunt and uncle have an IRA with $800,000 in it that's now paying them an allowance because by law, not by law, but by regulation, after a certain age, your IRA and your 401k have to start paying you a monthly allowance. It's called mandatory withdrawals. I'm sorry, they were too responsible. They saved too much of their money, and therefore they can pay for the Medicare by them flipping selves. That's called means testing. Instead, the grandparents are like, wait a minute, I've got a granddaughter in college. I was going to be the student loan for her. I was going to use the fruits of what I saved to get the Medicare I was promised, the Social Security I was promised, so I could then maybe help my niece, nephew, or granddaughter so they have no student loans. Now you're telling me I got to pay for my own retirement that you promised me? Oh boy, meet you at the voting booth. Look out.
Obviously, you've been paying taxes that goes to the shared pool, which is Social Security and stuff like that. So you're basically being penalized for being efficient, being cost-effective, not wasting a lot of money, being being
good citizen,
being responsible. Simple as that. I mean,
sorry you were a good citizen.
Yeah.
Sorry you were practical.
You should have been.
Screw you.
Yeah, you weren't splurging the money back then, so we're going to take it now. Like, it's just, it's unfortunate, and that's the way a lot of things are going, unfortunately. So it's definitely bad, because then what you're doing in the long run is you're penalizing good behavior, as opposed to kind of finding a way to weed out the bad behavior of somebody who's not responsible, somebody who's spending their money without saving it and stuff like that.
Totally.
Yeah.
But we started this today's podcast talking about social media. And did you see, like a year and a half ago, Facebook was very concerned because the youth that were coming in at age 14, 15, 16, on-ramping to social media.
Yep.
They're saying, no, Facebook is my parents and my aunts and uncles. They actually said that. No, I'm not on Facebook. That's them.
That's the MySpace of this time.
That's exactly right. Or I remember Friendster. I remember Bill Gruley at Benchmark Capital, great venture capitalist who's now retired, or semi-retired, mostly retired, whatever it is. Every now and then you see Bill on Twitter holding up a fish. But he was talking about how the Black Swan events happen. I'm now thinking about generational. It's like, what is the long-term prospects for the Meta stock if Facebook is not embraced by the next generation of users? And people like me, my Facebook's dormant. You know why? Because I didn't like what was happening. I would post something up there, not volatile, but I wouldn't get responses from friends and families, and someone would say, I never saw that post. I just went over to your profile and I saw what you posted, but that didn't show up in my news feed. Yep. So the invisible hands were in there, the hands of optimization, right? You know, what's this, Alec Guinness? These droids are not important to you. Away you go. You know what I'm talking about. It's Star Wars, you know. What do you think's going to happen? I mean, because, you know, are we basically going to have Black Swan events in social media that is simply because social media just goes the way of AOL and goes away? We saw it. Yahoo. Yeah. Yahoo. Once upon a time, Yahoo was the front door. You put in your zip code. You'd have movie theaters. You could have things you wanted. So suddenly that was like the front door to the internet. You went there every day and you could see, you know, all the local stories and everything, your local sports teams, and then Yahoo went away, just like AOL went away.
Yeah, so, no, for sure. I think, especially with Meta, like right now, there's the parts where, you know, when a company innovates and you're either creating the trend or you're just following the trend. And Meta, at least for a lot of years now, has just been following the trend. They tried to create the trend with the whole meta world. Metaverse. But obviously that might either be too early or people just don't even trust them in terms of what they're trying to do, and the company as a whole with their whole backlog of baggage and stuff like that from the past years.
So too early, too uninteresting, or if you're a board member, the board members at Meta, too damn expensive. What are you spending those billions on?
Exactly.
We're building the metaverse. What the hell? You know,
where is that? So what are we seeing from that? Which
that's the Biz Doc's impersonation of an apoplectic board member. What are we spending on?
Yeah.
You know. Why don't we put dividends out? Why don't we buy some of the stock back? What the hell?
Do more ads. You know? But no, they're going to a different universe with that. But no, I think that obviously the biggest challenge with Facebook right now is staying relevant. And without a doubt, they have probably the biggest ad platform in terms of being able to find people, to target people and stuff like that. But on the flip side, if us as users and consumers are spending less and less time on the platform itself, then that too, as a ripple effect of that, is going to be changed, and people aren't going to be. It's not going to be as cost efficient to run ads on it. So with that, they're definitely going to have an issue, and I think that they're going to have to make some bold moves in terms of doing something to change things up, because if they're just following and copying what other people are doing, then it's slowly going to taper off over time.
And completely. And Facebook could start, they have the daily callers out there, right?
Yeah.
That Facebook could have the daily lawsuit. So we all just tune in and see who has sued Facebook. There's a Ferris wheel going around. It's got all the state attorney generals on it that are on, around, okay, I'm suing, no, I'm suing. It goes around, you wait your turn. And yesterday I was reading that Facebook is being sued by, check this out, Facebook sued Moderators Africa. Let's look at this number. See if you can find the headline, Kellyanne. Pop this up. Look at this eye-watering number we're about to see. That's a lawsuit coming out of Africa for Facebook. Facebook, Africa, content moderator lawsuit. And look at what's happening. They're being sued for, do you ever remember Publishers Clearinghouse?
No.
Maybe your parents. Publishers Clearinghouse used to be an envelope that would show up to your front door with a picture of Ed McMahon, who was Johnny Carson's sidekick. This goes back a long time ago. Okay. It would be like, you may have won $4 million. And they were official-looking envelopes at a certain level.
Was that the original Nigerian prince email?
Basically. Okay. Yeah, that's exactly right. This poor Nigerian general is being held captive, and if you could just give me your bank account information, we'll send you a test of $500, and then we'll send you the $5 million, and you can hold it for him.
Exactly.
You find that, Kellyanne? It's out there this morning.
I found where
1.6
billion.
$1.5 billion. Wow. They were being sued for emotional distress. There it is. Here it is. Let's see the headline. Facebook content moderators in Kenya call the work torture. Their lawsuit may ripple worldwide. Now scroll up and take a look at what's going on here. It says, on the verge of tears, Nathan, unpronounceable, recalled watching a video of a child being molested and another of a woman being killed. 8 hours a day, his job is, now by the way, 8 hours a day, this is a hard job. Moderating Facebook required him to look at horrors that the world wouldn't have to. Some overwhelmed colleagues who would scream or cry. Now, nearly 200 of them are suing for mental health. Now, you would think with all the bots out there, couldn't they have like a moderation bot that says, hey, this kind of stuff here might be bad? But take a look at this. The moderators from several African countries are seeking $1.6 billion compensation, alleging poor working conditions, including insufficient mental health support and low pay. So anyway, instead of the daily caller for Facebook, we could have the daily lawsuit. We should just start that website.
Yeah, the daily
Meta,
lawsuit.
The daily lawsuit.
They might have already bought the domain though.
Yeah, you know what? They're probably like thinking ahead.
Yeah.
Hey, the daily
buy it now.
The daily MetaSuit.
Yep.
Anyway, so not only is Mark Zuckerberg just incinerating money, there's the soft sound of a shredder going on there as they invest in the metaverse, but now he's got this. But enough about Meta. I've gone on. I think we say how I feel, but it's nuts. But they are one of the 7 stocks that have done really good this year in that S&P 500.
Yep. 7
of the stocks are responsible for the majority of the gain of the S&P 500. And the other 493 is like flat or 3%. I think it was 3.3%. So S&P 500 is a stock index, and you watch it go up to get a sense of the weather report for stocks, right?
Yep, and it's essentially a basket of goods, almost like the inflation CPI of the stock market. And like you said, where
who are the 7 heroes? The 7.
It's Apple, Microsoft, Facebook, Nvidia has been going crazy.
Nvidia, boy, leading the parade.
Google, Amazon, and then probably
was Netflix in there making a comeback?
I don't know about Netflix.
I don't know.
But nonetheless, it's interesting though because it goes to show how skewed the S&P 500 can be. Where if you have 4, 5, say 10 stocks that are carrying the load, and overall the whole year the S&P is up. But in reality, the majority of it is either flatlining or going down. But there's a few of them that have so much real estate in that portion where that alone can pull it up. So it looks like it's doing well, but in reality, it's something very different on that end.
Yeah, and the one who's really leading the parade. Oh, I think Tesla was in there too.
Tesla could be in there too.
Yeah. Full disclosure, I loaded up on some Tesla at 119 at the beginning of the year, and now it's 274, so I'm very pleased. I just didn't load up enough. But What's interesting is Apple's in the middle of this, and they are leading the parade, aren't they?
Yes, Apple is the first company to hit a $3 trillion market cap.
You sent me a chart. Do you have that chart?
Yeah,
Do you have Kai's chart?
She has the chart. But they were also the first company to hit $1 trillion, if I'm not mistaken. And then they're probably the first company to hit $2 trillion, and then now $3 trillion.
Yeah, they were founded, what, April 76? I mean, everybody remembers, that, the big thing about it. April 76, Apple was founded. And so, here it is, 1 trillion, what is that, like?
Q3 2018, they hit trillion.
So what is that, 76, 18, 42 years? Something
Yes,
like
42 years.
42 years to hit $1 trillion.
And then
by the way, $1 trillion is pretty good. So
Yes.
let's not knock it.
Absolutely. Trillion, and they were the first company at the time to hit that officially.
And they had a near-death experience.
Yes, they were
bailed out by
Microsoft, which is that must be one hell of a negotiation. Go to Bill Gates and say, hey, you need to save my company by investing. But that also goes to show the power of distribution, because he could go to Bill Gates at the time and say, I'm going to grant you access for the Microsoft Office on all these laptops, and that was enough of a reason for Microsoft or Bill Gates to see that being worth it, because now he had access to distribution. Because starting off, Steve Jobs was very big on holding the ecosystem closed, where they weren't allowing Microsoft Office packages on Apple computers. The same thing with iTunes.
Yep.
iTunes was limited specifically to Apple computers. The whole idea of the iPod was to sell more computers, because that's where they could download the music and work with it and stuff like that.
Okay, $5 Starbucks card to you or Kellyanne. What was the name of the Microsoft competitor to the iPod?
I couldn't even tell you.
No.
I'm pretty sure it was Zune.
Zoom.
X-U-N-E. I think it was something like that.
X-U-N-E.
Yeah,
I'm gonna have to Google that.
Yeah, that's exactly
It
right.
couldn't have done too well.
And if you have a Zune, it's probably worth a lot of money. Someday you'll be on Antique Roadshow. Oh, this is a Microsoft Zune.
It's an
They
antique.
attempted to compete with
the iPod.
with the iPod, and they got their open source butt kicked.
Yep.
It's interesting. Let's go back to this chart again, because here in this run for the year, there it
there's
is.
the Zune.
There's the Zune.
I've never heard of that before.
That's a very original design.
You missed an opportunity to get a free Starbucks card from the Biz Doc.
$5 gift card.
There you go. So let's go back to the chart. People look at this, because I was doing some math in my head on that. So that's 42 years to 1 trillion, and then one was 2 trillion.
That 2 years later, in Q3 2020.
2 years later. So it took 42 years to make $1 trillion. Once they figured it out,
Took them 2 years.
they doubled it.
And then 3 years later, it was another trillion in Q3 2023.
This is going to get me in trouble, but it's like Catholics having kids. Once they have the first one, how do you stop them?
Yep.
It's like, so that's 2 trillion, and then 3 years later, it's a 3 trillion. But look how Microsoft followed it.
Yep. Which goes to show.
It's it's a market follow, and that's
Yes.
also a printing money follow.
I think it's a big. You obviously see the spike in what is that, mid 2020, which stimulus check spending, stuff like that. And I think that if you look at all of them, they have a very similar growth. Even Nvidia on the bottom has a similar growth where it takes off a little bit, it takes up, and then it kind of tapers off. And then now I'd say probably starting on 2023 is climbing fast.
Look at NVIDIA.
Yeah.
NVIDIA is within $30 trillion of Amazon right now.
No, 300 billion.
30
Yeah.
30 trillion.
Yeah,
Good gosh.
that'd be
Trillion, billion, pretty soon we're talking money. So it's within 300 billion of
that is impressive.
That's very impressive. What's also interesting is if you look at Amazon and you look at Alphabet there.
Yep.
They are the enabling platforms.
Yep.
NVIDIA is a product, Apple is a product, Microsoft is a product. So the products have had some spikes this year, whereas the enabling platforms have not. And when I say enabling platform, I'm talking about storage for Alphabet, I'm talking about Google, I'm talking about Amazon, AWS. AWS is a product, but you know what I'm saying? It's more of an enabling platform everybody else puts their crap on top of.
Yep.
But Man, but there you have it.
But I think Apple is a product, but also a platform. I mean, like that's the interesting thing about both Microsoft and Apple at this point.
Well, you have to buy the product, but then you're stuck on that
the product.
platform.
Yeah, because the big thing with Apple now is the last thing they innovated since Steve Jobs' death was the Apple Watch. And then you have some accessories, multiple different colors. A lot of these things, which were things that Steve Jobs was completely against in terms of 4 different phones. There we have Kelly with the Apple Watch. But their lack of innovation, my question is, how long can they keep the gravy train going before the lack of innovation is going to catch up and they're going to start tapering off? Because if you don't innovate and you're not taking risks and you're not leading from the front, kind of like with Meta, if you're just following suit, then that's only going to last for so long. And the only great thing that I think Apple has kind of done or changed in the last couple of years is creating the ecosystem where once you get sucked in, you get stuck. Where you have AirDrop, you have iMessage, you can share with things. Like, I mean, trying to send a picture to somebody that doesn't have AirDrop is a hassle. But aside from that, I see those as all defensive things. You're not really doing anything to capture more of the market share and compete and reach out more. You're just looking at, okay, how can I suck someone in and like make it so sticky that they can never get out of it?
Yeah, you remember Steve Jobs walked on stage with that brown manila envelope and slid out
the iPad,
the Air, the Air. And he talked about the tapering edge and all the innovation that went with it and what all that meant and everything. He was also talking about the innovation. After he passes away, you know, there was a couple lawsuits around the system OS updates for the phone that deliberately caused the batteries to run down faster because shortened battery life was what led people to think, oh, I guess my phone's old and dying. And then, which led to a whole group of businesses like You Break, I Fix, those little shops that you can go into. And you say, hey, I need a battery. And they've got those tools. They open it up, they reseal it, and they put the new battery in it. And all of a sudden it's working great, you know, back the way it was. But there was a lot of criticism that they were deliberately doing that to create the perception of technical obsolescence so that you bought a new one. That's what they were hoping everybody would do. You know, it never seems to me Steve Jobs wouldn't have done that.
No, not at all.
That's not a Steve Jobs place.
That's in my opinion something where you're just trying to push up the balance on the books. You're just trying to create a little bit more money. It's a defensive thing. You're not going offense and pushing boundaries or creating something new. You're simply finding a way of how can I squeeze an extra couple bucks out of the Biz Doc.
Yep. And speaking of squeezing an extra couple bucks out of people, guess what? Guess what's happening this week?
Prime Day.
Prime Day, where all America can save money by spending billions.
Yep, spend money to save money.
Let me think. Oh, it's a trick. Yep. So, what are the stats on Prime Day? I'm gonna turn you into an analyst, Kellyanne.
I'm ready for it. So in 2021, consumers spent $11.19 billion on Amazon Prime Day. And last year in 2022, they spent only $12 billion, only a little bit more, and they saved $1.7 billion. You guys spent $12 billion, and then you saved $1.7. So good job for you.
All right. What do the analysts think this year is going to be?
That is a great question.
Yes, do analyst forecast Prime Day. So do you buy stuff on Prime Day?
I see if there's something I need or that's useful, but I'm very opposed to buying things just to buy things to say that I save money.
Exactly.
No, that doesn't happen at our house.
No.
At our house, it's hey, we buy according to need.
Yep.
And we go on it's like, Bailey wanted to buy these sneakers. You know that Nike makes a Air Jordan knockoff of their own sneakers. Do you know that?
No, I had no idea.
It's a lower price point shoe that looks a lot like Air Jordan 1s.
Okay.
And there's a little bit of a platformness to it and stuff. So it's a different shoe, but it's supposed to look like AJ 1s.
Yep.
And she likes them because they're gray or they're light blue. And she said, I'm going to look around and find out where I can get them. And Walmart had them, of all places, apparently. There's Walmart or, DSW or something.
Okay.
But she didn't go running down the Foot Locker and she didn't go to the Nike website because I push on them. I say, look, we buy according to need, but you got to do your research and be a really smart consumer.
Yep.
And also be very, very careful from buying it off weird,
websites,
storefronts on eBay, because you're buying knockoffs.
Yep.
And so that's what we do. So when it comes Prime Day, it's not like spend, but we do a little bit more sensibility than that. We don't need 12 jars of the same peanut butter, because
you could save $3 though.
You could save $3 and you have enough
it.
peanut butter to last until grandchildren are born.
But I mean,
not sure I need that.
If you could get a second and a third air fryer and save $400, I think that's a good deal.
Although Bailey's taking an air fryer to college.
There you go.
We have a joke. Bailey walks down to the kitchen every morning, and our joke is, I say, Bailey will eat, and Bailey goes, anything. She'll have spaghetti. So, there's some spaghetti left? Oh, hey, there's these things left. All of a sudden, these wontons are in the air fryer. Zoom, there she goes, and I'm smelling dinner at 8 a.m. I said, why don't you have coffee and like granola like the rest of us? She's like, no, I kind of want this. She doesn't eat like this. It's just a small amount, but she's looking for regular stuff. So she will. So if there's an air fryer this time next year, before she's heading for Prime Day, we may get her an air fryer if she's allowed to take that to school. Because it's kind of funny. At the school, they'll say, you can have nothing that creates heat that can cook can be in a dorm room.
Okay.
Right.
Is that microwaves too, or no?
I don't know about the microwaves. I think microwaves be okay. Microwave popcorn. Plus, you have
Microwave
those little
fine.
$90 microwaves that are in a giant stack at Best Buy. It's just like a little tiny Samsung. It's big enough for microwave popcorn or ramen noodles. That's what it is. And but what have you got in your dorm room? 2 underage girls. Ounce of Coke and some fentanyl. Okay, as long as you don't have a stove, it's like
we don't want to create no heat here.
That's right.
So
It's just the way it goes. But interesting. So Prime Day is going to be so big. So anyway, Amazon, one of the 5 in the S&P 500, probably going to be a little bit of a pop. And then you've got Tesla was also out there.
Yeah, the interesting thing about Prime Day, though, for scale, is that as big as we think Prime Day is of 12 billion in a day, I mean, that's a lot of transactions. In China, their equivalent is the Singles Day. Take a guess on how much
Alibaba.
Take a guess on how much they generate on their Singles Day.
Well, remember, we have 330 million people in the United States, plus around 30 million people in Canada, because Canada is just a little bigger than California. And I think it's someone correct me on this, 54 million in Mexico. So if you take the North American contingent there, that's what, 400 million, maybe a little more than 400 million. And whereas you would need 5 of those to make the 2 billion in China, right?
Yeah.
So let's see. So a Prime Day is 13 million this year, 13 times 5. 110, 120?
140, 7x.
140, so it's even bigger.
7x,
So they're buying even more on a per capita basis.
Way
Holy moly.
So we got a little bit of ways to go.
140 billion.
Yeah, that's a solid number in a day.
You
That's a lot of millions in an hour.
Do you know how, like American consumers like, the fashion brands and the perception, this is Italian, even though it's all made in China and stuff. I wonder if, do Chinese consumers want, the American versions of these products?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that some of them maybe, but iPhones were big in China, and Tesla, I mean, they set up a factory there, and that was one of their second biggest markets. But it also depends on how much it's first movers advantage versus they just find similar knockoffs and they run with those.
Yep. Well, we're going to go to a couple questions. So while Kellyanne's pulling up a couple questions, it's just give a quick summary, because people like to ask me, Biz Doc, I got a small company, what are we thinking about? Well, look, we are seeing, it's very, very interesting. If you need warehouse space, you're probably in a tough spot, because warehouse space that's out there is holding its premium price. But if you actually need office space in most cities, it's pretty amazing. There's a quick chart you can pull from our, there's chart number 3, Kellyanne, from page 1. Take a look at this. So office, half full or half empty. Look at this. So the occupancy rate has really not come back yet. It's still heavy. So if you're an entrepreneur out there and you're running a tax services company and you've got looking for 3-4 people in an office space, you're probably finding office space at a pretty good discount. The rest of this year is going to be continued. I think the words are efficient, controlled, prudent, but look for the growth opportunity, but don't overspend. Don't overspend, and be careful about your debt. So people were asking me, what are these highlights? And that's the highlights. They haven't really changed in a few months. And there's, when you hear that the market's up, and you hear that this is jumping, you hear that's that, and then you find out it's only 7 companies, well, it really means there's not a whole lot for you to do just yet. But
yeah, that's a solid drop, that's for sure. And to think that as much as the conversation has been of, oh, they're all pulling the lever, come back to work,
Yep.
It's really crept up from, I'd say, 15%-ish up to shy of 50 right now, maybe like 48% in the course of 3 years. So to get back to the full 100 is going to take some time.
Yeah,
sure.
and these are going to be the regional banks that you're going to hear about. I think there's going to be more bailouts. I don't think there's going to be 40 of them fail, but I think you're going to hear about more bailouts in mid-sized cities because they funded a lot of those office buildings in those cities.
Yeah.
So they're carrying a mortgage on there that this property, so a property ownership group buys a big building. They start leasing it out. They can only get half of it leased now. That means they're only collecting half the lease money. Meanwhile, the bank is like, these guys aren't making payments on a $100 million mortgage. So you have that problem there. But for you and me and entrepreneurs, it may be a good time to find small office space, maybe getting a deal on that, but be prudent, be careful. I would be really careful about debt right now because they're going to push it at you at 7.5 to 9 on business loans, and they're going to be asking for personal guarantees. So that's where I see, nothing is really changing here, and we'll talk to you in 2 weeks when we see the Fed. Kelly, do we have some questions? I love questions from the audience.
We do. Our first question is from Joel Murrow. Biz Doc, when do you think the rates will drop?
When do I think rates will drop? Well, the Fed has said that it could be up to 2 years before the rates drop. Now let's examine that line from the Fed. Number one, 2 years from now, we will be just, believe it or not, 90 to 120 days into the new economic policy of the president. Whether that's Joe Biden, somebody else from the Democrat Party that runs because the DNC is preparing it, Gavin Newsom, or if it's somebody, if it's DeSantis, or if it's Trump, or if it's Vivek, or whatever surprise there, they're going to get elected November 24, inaugurated end of January 25. Then you have the cabinet will get approved, a bunch of things come into place, boom. April, May is the first time you're going to see the stroke of a pen on an economic mandate, like a change to the tax program, whatever. So it's probably 2 years from now. So the Fed is kind of waiting for inflation to get back to 2%. That's what they're saying. And they're saying that they may not lower rates for up to 2 years. So I would say it's probably a little sooner. I'm looking for a rate decrease from the Fed about 1.5 years from now. And I see the first decrease happening right around the election time. So if the election's not razor thin, it's pretty obvious who's going to, be elected. Then I think you're probably going to see it then. But get ready. This is the new normal. I would expect 6 to 8% mortgages to be the new normal for a while, and I think that's what we're going to see. So thank you, Joel, for the question. But that's what I see. 1.5 years max, with the Fed themselves saying could be 2 years. That's coming out of their mouth, not my mouth.
I think they're also trying to not overstep, so rather put it on the safe side than to say 6 months from now and then, whoops, well, I guess we're not doing it. So they're probably erring on the side of caution and being able to rather speed it up as opposed to kick it down the road.
And the economy's been a little bit more resilient, even though the jobs numbers are monkeyed with. Yes, they are. There's been a lot of guests that have been on the PBD podcast that talked about facts, figures, and how they monkey with the jobs numbers. Oh, they beat their own evidence at 14 times in a row. How does the government get it right 14 times in a row? Just say that to yourself. The government got this right 14 times in a row, and you'll say to yourself, oh, something's wrong with that.
No, something's wrong.
So that's what's going on there. We have time for one more question.
We do. DABA is asking for your best 3 book, movie, or documentary recommendations in order to go from 0 to a multimillionaire.
To go from 0 to a multimillionaire, book recommendations?
Or a movie or a documentary.
Yeah. Well, first of all, if the goal is to be a millionaire, you're probably lacking the passion. If your goal is to find a crevice in a market and say, there's a product that's needed here, or, my dad was a plumber, my brother's a plumber, my uncle's a plumber. I think I could have the best plumbing supply distributor here in the city. There's so many ways you could start a business, but you got to have a reason inside. It's not about books on how to pick stocks or how to do this to become a millionaire. Making money on a business would be the outcome of running a really good business. And if a really good business is really successful for a good amount of time, then you know what? The outcome is you may have those extra fruits. But I would be careful about making millionaire the goal, and here's why. So let me summarize this. Be careful about making being a millionaire your goal, because let me tell you what's happened to some sudden millionaires. You can go look a study called The Suicides of Lottery Winners, and it goes like this. Lottery winner gets a bunch of money. They keep their job for, I'm going to get these wrong, but I'm going to give you some estimates. I think the article said approximately 6 months. Oh, I don't want this to change me. They get a nice car, a new car. They pay off whatever credit cards they got. And for 6 months, they don't do much. Then they quit their job. And then they move to a different part of town because they got a nicer house. And then they start, so 1 year. Now we're 1 year. In the second year, they talk about feeling loneliness. Where are their friends? They're still working at their jobs. Their family has been asking for money. Hey, Kai, could I have $30,000 to pay off my student loans? No. Well, you just won it. It was just given to you. Yeah. Why don't you share with your family? Shouldn't charity start at home? So now they're having stress with family members. They're also, their friends, there's some distance. Then usually vices show up out of boredom. And there is a pathology that shows that before they get to 4 years after winning the lottery, 1% of lottery winners commit suicide.
Or most of them go broke.
With addiction, with a loss of family in terms of distance of relationships, distance of friends, and they said a loss of purpose. I had a crappy little job, but at least I had a purpose. It was my crappy little job. I was a manager at a tire store. But that was my job. I knew tires. I would help my friends. I was doing all that. So even if you didn't like working or it was the conditions maybe weren't perfect, you felt you had a little bit of sense of purpose. All the purpose goes away. Boredom comes in. Vices are there. So if you make it your goal to be rich and you go out there and you win the lottery, you better have a good support network, because there's a meaningful percent of lottery winners that commit suicide before the 48 months have passed for all of those reasons. Now then, what great books could you read about starting a company? I'll give you a few. 0 to 1, great book about starting a company.
Peter Thiel.
Exactly. And the corollary to that from Eric Ries,
I'm blanking.
The Lean Startup.
Yes.
They look at things a little differently, but it's there. And what would be really interesting, documentaries. I had my kids sit down and watch The Men Who Built America. Not everything in there was all virtuous. There were some things in there, read about the Johnstown flood and some things that happened along the way, but you also see that what they did to improve the quality of life throughout America. And I would say watch any documentaries on the emergence of certain sports teams. There's a great documentary that was on Michael Jordan, and you can follow somebody along how they manage success. Not from a fanboy, oh, I love the NBA, I love Michael Jordan, oh, I'm a fan. No, but you see all the chapters he went through to win those championships. Tom Brady, Man in the Arena, I also like. What did he go through to keep winning championships and keep succeeding after he became a mega millionaire? And he was married to the hottest model in the world, the most successful model in the world. So there you go. There's enough to make all of us jealous, you know. But go take a look at how he managed his life and what he went through to keep winning. Take all those spirits together and then say to yourself, do I want to put that kind of energy in? Do I want to put that kind of blood, sweat, and tears on the table? And if I do, what do I want to do? Do I take over a family business? Do I build something on my own? Do you have the intestinal fortitude and the willingness to do it? So I'm sorry to be negative, but just wanting to be a millionaire is like wanting to win the lottery, and there's more downside than upside.
Absolutely.
And stuff. So speaking of upsides, what do we have coming up? August 30th to September 2nd.
We have the Vault Conference, where none other than Tom Brady will actually be there, speaking with Patrick Bet-David, our CEO, alongside with Mike Tyson. We have Will Guidara, who was a chef or restaurateur who created the #1 restaurant in the world. So these are definitely
and he wrote a book about it?
Pioneers of business, and he wrote a book, Unreasonable Hospitality, which is a phenomenal book when it comes to customer service and creating an experience. So for anyone who has considered attending, wants to attend, go to thevaultconference.com, where you can get your tickets, you can get registered, and we will definitely see you in Miami when the time comes.
Yeah, specifically Hollywood, Florida, just right there near FLL, Fort Lauderdale Airport. You will get so much out of this. It'll be tools and lessons and learnings to apply to your own business. While you're sitting in a room with thousands of other people, you'll make some friends and maybe new colleagues who are doing the same thing that you're doing, walking over the hot coals of entrepreneurship and being a leader in all manner of organizations. There's a lot to learn, new people to learn it from, and sit in a room with people where you say, I'm not crazy. Here's a bunch of folks shoulder to shoulder with me thinking the same way. So looking forward to see you at Vault. Consider it. Go check it out, www.valuetainment.com, and find events and go over to Vault. And until next week, I'm Tom Ellsworth, the Biz Doc, for Kai Lode, and I hope we left you better than we found you.
Take care.